Thank you for helping me cook, kiddos. The kitchen can get a little lonely sometimes. I don't think I have to ask if you all liked the food or not. I'm sure you guys liked it. You guys pretty much took over. I liked it, though. Yeah, maybe we should open a tavern. Never too old or too young to start, after all. Alright. I see how you're all looking at me. I know you're eager for a story. I was writing back some letters to old friends, and I found some old magic scrolls I never used. So I was reminded by a certain someone. Let's get that fire started. Oh, right. Kids haven't seen me do that before. I'll get to that in tonight's story, don't you worry. You kids know that I use magic from what the ancient giants left behind, but it's different from how scholars like wizards, or those gifted like sorcerers, use their magic. Wizards learn how to bend the weave, while sorcerers are born with abilities to manipulate the weave. What I can do is basically pulling an already disrupted part of the weave through the runes to create magic. It's similar, but not quite. Seeing as no one fell asleep after that, I brought it up because a friend of mine displayed the differences in her strengths when I was fighting some undead when I was stuck in a swamp. It was my 6th encounter that day, and I was running out of energy. At this point, I already have Exalted Crimson, the sword you kids always gawk at, and it made quick work of these zombies, but they still had the numbers. In that 6th encounter, I stepped on some kind of plant, and it grabbed my legs. Moving my legs weren't enough to get the vines off, and, well, the undead were already in front of me. They bit, and they clawed their way through some of the armor. And, well, I did my best to kill as many of them as I could. When I knew I wasn't going to survive any longer, I invoked a frost rune for strength, and turned into a giant again. It was the second and last time for the day. I stomped and I slashed them apart as more came out. And what's worse is that I underestimated the danger in the swamplands. Because when I thought I could just make a run, I bumped into an Eden. They're large creatures that would remind you of an ogre, but they had 2 heads. And this one grabbed me by the throat with one hand and then smashed a rotting log on my side. I really thought that was going to be the end of my time. I was going to swing my sword because I never intend to go down without a fight. But suddenly Eden lets me go as I see its eyes go completely black. I fell back on my feet, and I still swung. I whiffed it, because I was still feeling lightheaded from the lack of air and the pain. I took a step back, and while the 2 heads started arguing with each other, saying something about an angry witch or being bad at holding things, I don't really remember. What I do remember is turning around and seeing a ball of light explode in a white flash, partly turning some of the undead into ash. I couldn't focus on that for that long, however. I still had an Eden to fight. Its eyes went back to normal, and let me tell you, kids, you do not want to know how good of a right hook it gave me. Then I heard a deep, accented voice shout at me to kill it quickly, and suddenly I feel a magical effect all over my body. Like time was just a bit slower, but I moved at the same speed. Before I knew it, I took 3 of my slashes with the fire rune invoked. It was restrained by the shackles of fire before it could reach me. I was about to have the killing blow. But then I see the mage that's been throwing his magic everywhere. So, from this goblin's hand left a sickly green beam that branded the skin of the Eden's chest. My magic disappears while the monster falls over, both its mouths frothing. I returned to normal, and I was going to try and find the goblin, but as soon as I turned around, he was already there, scolding me for entering dangerous parts of the swamp alone, and making so much damn noise. I'll admit, I deserved it. I was cocky, and because I thought that a few monsters and undead wouldn't be an issue for me, so I almost paid the price. Of course, I didn't forget to thank him. I have my manners. Besides thanking him, I even asked him if he knew a way out. Also, admittedly, I was pretty lost. I think I realized it after my third fight, since I got pretty turned around. Damn swamp looked all the same to me. The goblin, Sigmund, almost looked surprised that my only reply consisted of, "Thank you for saving my ass," and "Can you help me find a way out of my swamp?" The swamp. Something tells me he wasn't expecting me to be that accepting of his intervention. A lot of people don't like goblins, but some of them are just like us. Like Sigmund. Albeit, Sigmund's a bit of an ass. He's a bit of a jerk. But he means no harm. I followed him for a few hours after he reluctantly agreed to help me. He told me that where we were was one of the most dangerous parts of the swamp. That was the place that almost everyone avoids going to. Still sounding reluctant, he asked me about what kind of magic I used during that fight. I told him the same thing as all the others. He took note of it and didn't respond after that. Not much of a talker. No, I didn't ask him what he was. It was already clear to me. He was a wizard. He had the spellbook and everything. Believe it or not, he's possibly smarter than all of us. Anyway, that guy loves to read. You kids probably have never been in a proper swamp before. I have, and the swamp in the Jade Lowlands are still my worst experience. If it wasn't being knee-deep in muddy soup, it was plants trying to eat me. More of those damn zombies, or literal portals to the Feywilds. I wish I was kidding, but apparently I almost stepped through one. Sigmund had to smack my leg with his cane before it was too late. Only after he was done explaining, we both heard giggling of fairy sprites somewhere in the canopies. I've dealt with the Fae before my trip into the lowlands, and they're a tricky bunch. Their pranks range from simple scares to fooling you into murdering a whole town. Consider that the obligatory "don't mess with fairies" warning that comes with every mention of the Fae. Sorry to get so dark. I mean it. Be careful of fairies. Anyway, where were we? Right. I arrived at Sigmund's hut. It smelled like old wood, but in a good way. What was that? Yeah, it smells like this cabin actually, but no hint of swamp. Anyway, he used a spell called Prestidigitation to clean all the muck and dirt from my armor and clothes. Surprisingly, he didn't have a mending spell to repair some of the pieces on my plating. He sat me down at the dining table, since those had the only chairs that were regular sized for us humans. I asked him why he had chairs for guests if he was such a grumpy hermit. He responded, an old hag used to pester me for notes because she hardly listened to our mentor's lessons. I asked him about his mentor, but they were all single-word answers and no. From what he actually answered, his mentor was a half-elven woman who was a master-class evocation wizard, meaning she specialized in destructive magic. But that's all he told me. I'm not sure why he's so secretive about it, but I let it be. The next day came with the door being bashed open. I woke up immediately to a bone club across my jaw, and I fell over the chair. I know, exciting way to wake up. I was dazed while I reached for my sword, but when my vision cleared, I watched a gnoll, a monstrous humanoid dog creature, get its head immolated in an instant with a bolt of fire. "Don't just lay there, human," Sigmund shouted at me. "Fight them!" He reached out a glowing hand, and the spell from yesterday affected me again. I felt my body vibrate with energy, and with one swift motion I got up and bolted to the door. Seeing a big group of gnolls, I didn't really think about it when I did it. I cleaved two in half in one blow, before they started to gang up on me. Like what I said last time, one of the things that can beat plate armor is maces, and these guys made full use of theirs to wear me down. I was beat up pretty badly, but I kept my stance firm, with the hill rune invoked. Just imagine a bunch of people trying to hit a statue with hammers. That's what it looked like. They probably thought I was some kind of monster when I didn't go down for their pack tactics. They started backing off, but before they got too far, I retaliated faster than they could ever expect. Just one slash after another at intense speeds. I nearly dropped all of them, with two just getting away with a massive gash. Or, at least, they were getting away before Sigmund casted some kind of ghostly, skeletal hand that appeared and grabbed one of them. The hand suddenly caught fire and burned the gnoll on its grasp. The last one got away, but not without screaming on his way out. When the spell faded, the fatigue hit me as it did yesterday. It was nothing I couldn't walk off, but I was dizzy for a good few minutes. Magic is a powerful thing in this world, if you couldn't tell already. I grabbed my things and we set off for the day. Sigmund closed down his house with magic locks and barricaded his windows. It wasn't the first time gnolls have attacked him, apparently. Sigmund was a bit more curious about my magic after that fight. He began asking more questions and took notes. He still wasn't talking about his mentor, but it did open up a dialogue about magic. He told me a lot about his personal work, researching and experimenting with magic. I asked him at one point if he spoke with others about magic. He told me that he worked with a partner under his mentor. Sigmund just started ranting about her work ethic after he described what she looked like. I was just nodding along until it clicked. He was describing Zofia Larethian, the witch I met some time ago in the Jagged Earth. I dropped her name into conversation, and he seemed genuinely surprised that I knew her. He called her, things I probably shouldn't tell you kids, but strangely enough, he actually asked if she was doing alright last time I saw her. The change of inflection in his voice really contrasted the disinterest he had for me earlier. Despite his callousness, he seems to actually care for things other than magic and arcane secrets. Sigmund thinks of Zofia as a friend, but also a rival, which I'd say is pretty healthy. We were still going through the swamp, but everything's been surprisingly tame compared to yesterday. He had plenty of time to tell me about his magic in exchange of telling him about my rune magic. Sigmund specializes in experimental magic and arcane knowledge. He knows enough about magic that he can actually bend the formula of spells he uses to suit his needs. Fireball can be radiant energy, like what he did with the undead the other day, or a spell called Chill Touch can produce fire instead of necrotizing energy. He can get away with it because of his extensive studies, apparently. It's not something just any wizard can achieve, considering he's the only mage I've ever met that can do something like that. As a wizard, he interacts with the weave the same way as any other mage does. The major difference is that he's perfected an experimental method of channeling magic. So he can actually pull things off that may seem strange or impossible for any other mage. He can even impede the thoughts or muscles of an enemy so they can't appropriately react to what's being thrown at them. You know, a good example of this is when we fought those undead-like creatures called coalmen. They're strange humanoid people that have skin as black as coal and piercing, sometimes glowing, red eyes. If you guys don't believe me yet, Sigmund fired an entirety of an actual lightning bolt out of his hands toward the coalmen. The sound was nearly deafening, but I got to watch the coalmen started puffing up their chest instead of trying to leap for cover. It's as if they think they can withstand something like that. As you kids might expect, these two coalmen got reduced to ashes pretty easily. I protected Sigmund from getting attacked by the last coalman. It took a good few blows before it fell. These coalmen were on the weaker end of the spectrum when it came down to their ranks. I've fought some nasty ones, but I'll save that for another time. When we were sure they weren't getting back up, we proceeded. It was, after that fight, things got more heated. It felt like every damn creature in the swamp began picking fights with us. The worst fight was when we got turned around and ended up in the wrong area of the swamp. Sigmund said he easily remembers the subtle marks he leaves for himself, but he seemed to follow the wrong marks and brought us to a coven of hags. Of course, it wasn't just a bunch of hags huddled together near a pond. It was a bunch of pretty nymphs playing near a pond. It only took a short glance from me and Sigmund to know it was obviously a trap. Unfortunately, we were already within their danger zone. They dropped their disguises quickly and revealed the ugly hags that they actually are. They bickered with Sigmund before they started slinging magic, calling him a thief and a trickster, to which he responded, and I quote, "The secrets you stole from your archfey would only go to waste. It's a miracle you even got it in the first place. They must have let you have it as a pity prize." I don't have to tell you kiddos that we started fighting after he said that. I immediately feel something in my mind begin to take over, but I was able to shake it off. The next thing I had to worry about was the lightning bolt headed my way. I was too slow with my reaction and took the blow. It was devastating, but not enough to bring me down. Not by a long shot. I thought Sigmund was going to use the haste spell again, but nothing came while I rushed towards the hags and strike them. They weren't difficult targets to hit, really. At least, not to me. I saw one hag with a flicker of magic on her hand, but it seemed like it was directed to Sigmund. Little did I know, that was a counterspell, a spell that nullifies other spells, which explained why it seemed like Sigmund wasn't doing anything significant. The hags created some distance and began cackling, more magic invading my head. It was becoming too much and it started hindering my performance. One hag stayed within my reach to blast a green ray towards Sigmund, to which he retaliated with his own lightning bolt, spindling his magic to create radiance instead of lightning. He even had the balls to say something while he was at it. "I can do you one better," he says. This guy was so full of himself, it was less irritating and more hilarious. He hit both hags with that bolt of crackling light that was actually much stronger than theirs. So much so that I'd even say I would barely survive it if I was the target. So, back to me. I still have a hag within reach, but the magic affecting my mind was still messing with me, causing me to miss both my swings. The damn thing laughing at me wasn't helping either. Despite that, I rushed the hags from farther away. The one closest to me took a swipe at me with her claws, but barely scratched my armor. By the time I reached the hags, they were just about ready to swipe at me, but I finally feel that familiar surge of energy, and time began to slow a bit. There was definitely a fear in their eye when I parried each strike from my sword. I concentrated my breathing and swung a total of 3 times at one of the hags. I don't want to get too detailed, but let's just say stitches couldn't close any of the gashes I gave her. So, don't count me out yet, kiddos. I'm not done yet. I realigned my stance and then threw 2 more swings at the next hag before she could even plan her next move. I invoked a fire rune and held her in place. It gave me an opportunity to run back to the next target. Sigmund summoned that skeletal hand to necrotize its body after that. Then, all it took was a single swing of my sword to cleave her in half. The last hag, surprisingly, broke out of her shackles before the fires completely consumed her. From where I stood, I thought I was going to have to take another bolt of lightning to the chest, and possibly die right there. I wasn't exactly looking like I was in top shape after that first hit. With a smile on its face, it launched the bolt. Except, it didn't, because the magic fizzled out of existence before it really did anything. I just heard Sigmund laugh in the background. "You fool! Did you think I wouldn't use the arcane knowledge I took from you? I know all of your tricks. Finish her, Rune Knight, we have places to be." That's what he said, and with a smugness I believe you kids can imagine on your own. I'm not as ruthless as I sound in these stories I tell you. I gave it a chance to flee, but it just spat on the ground and to get ready to keep fighting. So I had to end it there. Look, kiddos. In my work back then, I did do a lot of killing, and while it seems fun to take down big monsters, it's still a life you're sending to the afterlife. Monster or person. I know I make it seem all theatrical, but it takes a toll on a person's head if it's not in the right place. Huh? How I dealt with it? Well, I believe in retaliating to fight. If you notice, it's not exactly me picking my fights here. It's the fights coming to me. I'm fighting to defend myself and Sigmund. It gets more complicated than that. But let's talk about that some other time. Anyway, Sigmund and I walked away from there, and we found a quiet spot to catch our breath. I talked about the fight for a little bit, like I always do. He knew that they had the ability to negate his spells. That's why he casted minor spells to burn them out, and when he saw the opportunity, he was able to cast haste on me without anyone countering his magic. Sigmund was clever in a fight, as he is with puzzles and riddles. Also from then on, he started calling me Rune Knight. And I guess with the suit of plate armor, with runic engravings and runic powers, it fits. In some parts down south and southwest, actually, rumors of Einar the Rune Knight actually spread a bit a few years ago, but I'm just an old myth now. During our little break, I pestered him into teaching me a little bit of magic. He was reading his spellbook while he was drinking a potion, and tea in his flask. With the look he gave me, he was either going to turn me into a rat, or banish me into the Feywild. But, to both our surprise, he actually gave in and taught me some magic. It was time-consuming, so we were actually already walking while he explained the basics to me. For someone with such an attitude, you wouldn't expect him to be a patient teacher, but to my surprise, he was. I've had the privilege of entering a school like you kids, so I wasn't by any means slow. But the way he explained things was a little complicated, so I asked questions, as you should, if you don't understand something. And he answered them, and made sure I understood. It goes to show how complex one person can be, huh? By the time we were close to leaving the swamp, I learned how to cast light and prestidigitation. Light can turn anything into a light source. Like this book. Okay, let's turn that off. It's really bright, so you can imagine how much money I saved up on torches or lantern oil. Even better, prestidigitation that just lets me light small fires for torches or campfires, like you kids saw earlier. Why didn't I learn something like green flame blade? Good question. You get a cookie. That's because my sword is strong and magical as is. I decided on picking something more useful outside of combat. Besides those two basic spells, he also taught me one of his spells. It's called Expeditious Retreat. The spell lets me dash across long distances a lot easier, and despite the name, I've used it to get to an enemy rather than away from an enemy, as far as I remember. What, you kids aren't surprised? I didn't think you would be. Now, it's not a complete story without facing something big or scary. Can anyone guess what Sigmund and I found before we left the swamp? Or rather, what found us? Oh, did someone say giant? Because you're right. A Cyclops found us. It pushed some trees aside, shouting, "Walking Metal Man." It wasn't my first rodeo when it came to giants. I invoked the Frost Rune as I spun around to defend myself. As soon as I turned around, a massive wooden club was brought down on me. I dug Exalted Crimson into the wood as we both struggled to take control. With the Frost Rune, I'm actually nearly as strong as a Cyclops, at least. I want to brag about how I was able to push the thing back, but no. A Cyclops is still a Cyclops. So it was able to win our little clash, and it was able to strike an opening that it made for itself too. It hurt, but it was gonna take more than that to bring me down. While Sigmund was getting ready to expend all of his magic for the day, I didn't want to fight anything else after those hags. Trust me, I was in good shape, but man, was I tired of that day. And it was talking while we were having our standoff. We were waiting for each other to make our move. It told me that it was fighting the Metal Man because there was someone in nature that it couldn't kill. And the Cyclops wanted to prove its fellow giants wrong. I think. I'm not really sure. So I told him, "Turn tail and run, giant. If I have killed everything else that has come my way, you'll end up in the ground too." I actually speak its language. I started learning it at the same time I found these runes. It looked confused for a moment, since it didn't know anything else could speak its language, except other giants. Sigmund looks just as surprised as I try to make conversation with it. I explained to it that Sigmund and I were just trying to leave the swamp. We weren't trying to challenge anyone. The Cyclops was convinced, and it was also definitely scared of me, so it kept its eyes on me as it walked back into the forest. Was I bluffing? I'll let you kids be the judge of that. Sigmund was, again, impressed by something he didn't expect from me, but he still didn't complain for wasting a readied spell for when the fight started. So, that's the end of the story. No grand lesson to be learned here, kiddos. I just wanted to talk about magic and the interesting goblin friend I made during my time in the swamp. We got back to town without issue and enjoyed some drinks at the tavern. We exchanged information while we were there. I typically got the hang of doing that since, so I know where to go next. He talked about Sophia too, since, I was curious about her, so I want to ask. I've seen her plenty of times in my travel, and, well, it's getting late. Maybe I'll tell you kids about Sophia next time. There's more to her than just being a witch. Well, that should be it for now. You kids should sleep. I just need to get some fresh air outside. Good night, kiddos.